My name is Elizabeth Simmons. Today is July 28th and it's 2008. I am at Pembroke Township at the home of Mr. Michael Latting. That's in Kankakee County, Illinois. This interview is being conducted as part of the Illinois State Museum's Oral History of Illinois Agriculture project. Hello, Mr. Latting. How are you?
Pretty good, and how are you?
Great, I'm fine, thank you. When we get started here, before we look more at your farm and business, I'd like to ask you a few questions so we can get a little idea about your background. If you don't mind, can you say who your mother was or is and who your father is?
My mother is Harriet Latting, and my dad is Thurl Latting.
And your mother's maiden name was?
Brown.
Brown, thank you. And how did your family come to settle in Illinois originally?
Well, I don't know how far back I can go with that. I do know that both my parents were born in Illinois, and my granddad ultimately bought this place that we're sitting on right now back when I was a kid.
Okay, and so your presence in Pembroke Township has been about how long would you say?
I personally have been here 32 years.
And your grandfather?
He was here about 10 or 15 years before me.
Okay, and do you have brothers and sisters in your immediate family?
I have a sister. Her name is Tracy.
And where does she live?
She lives in Robbins, Illinois.
Is that south of?
That's north. That's north of here. It's one of the suburbs of Chicago.
Okay, thank you. And when you were growing up, did you spend most of your time out in the Chicago area, or were you out here with your grandfather?
Pretty much so. I didn't spend a lot of time out here, actually, until I got out of college.
Did your grandfather have a structure where he could like stay when he was out here?
Well, when he first came here, he had a little travel trailer that he had up by the barn.
And that travel trailer, was that a place that you might go with him occasionally if he was out here on the land, and you'd stay with him there too?
Well, I came up once originally with him when I was real little, but it was a little bit too rural for me at the time, I guess. I didn't really come back this way until 1976, the year I graduated from college.
Okay. About what time period would it be that you're recalling that you were a small child and your grandfather brought you here?
Oh, I'm going to say probably in the mid-60s.
Mid-60s, okay. Generally, since you spent most of your time with your family in the city, were there particular chores or other responsibilities that you had around the house?
Well, actually, we had horses even in Robbins.
Oh, you had horses in Robbins.
That's correct.
Okay.
And one of the things that we did was that after we got home from school, we'd either practice, but every day we had to do chores.
Okay. What type of chores, for example, did you do growing up?
Well, you had to feed, you had to hay and grain the horses every day, make sure they had water. You had to help clean stalls. You know, just traditional kind of things.
So pretty much you've always been around horses since you were a boy then?
Oh, certainly, certainly.
Okay. All right. And what was your favorite subject in school?
You know, I really don't know. Being an educator, you know, that's kind of an odd question for me. I don't know. I'm going to say that I think the class that I enjoyed the most was in high school, geometry.
You like geometry?
Yeah. Okay. And I'm not sure if I like geometry as much as though I appreciated it, and I think I learned a lot from the instructor.
I see. And what was the thing that particularly attracted you the most about geometry?
I think it was learning how to think on your feet. I really think that's what it was all about.
Okay. And did your family have gatherings that they would get together like routinely? Were they here out in Pembroke, or were they in the city maybe for the Christmas holidays or 4th of July?
Well, our family, we've always had a close family. And usually for each one of the holidays, we'd meet at one of the parents or one of the grandparents or parents' homes. Okay.
And would the extended Latting family, how many people would that have been?
Well, it was my sister and I. There was another sister originally that died when she was in her 30s. She had sickle cell.
Oh, I see.
That's
too bad.
She passed when she was in her 30s. Prior to that, I'm the oldest grandchild, so all the other cousins and things were a lot younger than myself.
Okay. Would you say there were, what, 10, 20 of you?
Oh, no. I'd say there's probably 6 maybe total.
6 of you.
Yeah.
And where would the majority of your kin be living at this point?
Pretty much in South Chicago suburbs.
South Chicago.
Yeah.
Did your family come from somewhere prior to living in Chicago?
My mother's originally from Chicago, and my dad is too.
Okay. All right. And when you were younger and up to this time, do you have any particular interests or activities or hobbies that were perhaps maybe not quite directly related with horses?
I can't think of anything. I think it's always been about horses.
So you've been a horseman as long as you can think
as
of.
long as I can remember.
Okay. When you graduated from high school, what did you do then?
Well, I was fortunate enough to get a rodeo scholarship. I went to school in Casper, Wyoming.
Can you tell me a little bit about that rodeo scholarship?
Well, you know, out west they have situations just like to do football or basketball in our area, and you could go to school just like you did to go to school on a football scholarship, but only on a rodeo scholarship.
I see.
And that's what kind of got me out west.
And this was in Casper, Wyoming?
That's correct.
What was the name of the school that you attended after high school?
It was Casper Junior College.
Okay. And then when you finished at Casper Junior College, did you go somewhere after that?
I went to the University of Southern Colorado in Pueblo.
Okay. And what did you study at Southern Colorado?
I was a physical education major.
Okay. And did you continue riding and competing in rodeo at that point?
Oh, certainly, yes.
When was the first time that you started competing in rodeo? Was that in high school or younger?
Well, it was younger. Actually, I started riding bulls when I was 12 years old.
And what was your first time riding a bull? How long do you suppose you stayed up?
Well, I don't know. I got a little further than I think the world thought I was supposed to get. I probably got about 6 seconds. I didn't make the qualified ride, though, the first time.
What was the time to qualify?
8 seconds.
8 seconds. Yeah. Is it graduated depending on the age of the rider?
No, it's 8 seconds, period.
Okay. And so we're here today in part because you, of course, run the Pembroke Rodeo, and if I understand correctly, that's a rodeo promotion company. You provide bulls and animals and other things related to rodeos?
That's correct.
Okay. So you've always been involved in horses, and even since you were quite young in the rodeo, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. What was it like for you finding a career after college? You had all these great experiences with horses, and then you also had a degree in physical education. So
well, actually,
what's a career like?
To be honest with you, back in the early 70s, when I got out of college, I could make more money rodeoing than I could teaching school. And part of the problem, as I saw it, was why should I teach school when I can rodeo and make more money? Well, my mom didn't see it quite that way, because me being the first child and the first one to graduate from college, she thought it was important that I do something with my degree. And so quite naturally, if that's what mom wants, that's pretty much what you're going to do. Speaking of career choices, when I got out of college, my mom thought it would be really important for me to pursue my degree, a career in my degree area. And so I applied to a few schools, and unfortunately one of them called me. So quite naturally, then I had to go to work at the school. But it was really a good thing, in that hindsight's always 20/20, and mothers always know best, as do fathers. But I realize now that rodeo just wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. Part of what I was supposed to be doing was motivating and changing kids' lives. I think that's really what I was put here for. But I was given a tool to use to help get children to where they're wanting to pay attention and be able to have something in common.
Now, you were very fortunate, we talked before, to have a different sort of education than a lot of people have. When you were growing up in Chicago, you told me that you went to private schools.
Yes, I went to St. Benedict Grade School, and from there I went to Marist High School.
And Marist High School is what group operates Marist High School?
Well, I can't tell you now. It's been X amount of years ago since I've been there, but I'm not sure.
Is it a religious
school? Oh, it most certainly is. It's a Catholic school.
Okay.
But when you said usually I was thinking of what order of brothers.
Yeah.
Is the reason that I kind of hesitated on that answer. I really couldn't tell you now.
Yeah. So how do you feel your education affected your final career choices, and what effect did that education have on you?
You know, I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. I think some things just happen because they're supposed to happen. And did I start a long time ago saying that I wanted to be a teacher? No. Did I say a long time ago I wanted to be a principal? No. But I knew that I was a people person, and that whatever I could do to help people is kind of what I wanted to do. And so that kind of put both things together. We started a lot of kids riding horses in this area. We parlay that into helping kids in and out of school. And it's just kind of a thing that I just kind of fell into that was a fit for me.
Okay. So you would say that you feel that in a lot of different ways your education influenced your successes?
Oh, certainly. Certainly.
Okay.
It opened up doors that probably would have never been opened.
All right. And then I asked, changing gears a little bit, I asked you a few other questions, more family-oriented questions, and I was kind of curious how you met your wife.
She happened to live next door to me, and it was kind of hard not to meet her. I came out of the house, I looked over there next door, and I said, wow, and that's kind of where it started.
And so there was this very pretty young girl in your neighborhood.
Exactly right.
Now, let's talk a little bit about where you grew up in Chicago. You mentioned that you grew up in the city, but you didn't say where.
Actually, Robbins, not in the city.
I'm sorry, I take
outside
that
of the
back.
city, but I grew up in Robbins, Illinois.
Okay. And so Robbins is a suburb outside of the city, and when you were younger, that you still had horses there.
Correct.
In that area.
Correct.
Okay. And so she lived in your neighborhood in Robbins.
Uh-huh.
What are some memories that you have about living and growing up in Robbins?
Oh, it was. I really had a good childhood. You know, both my parents were home, or there, and it's kind of the way I thought the rest of the world was supposed to be at the time. To be honest with you, I can't think of any negative in any area of it.
What was your favorite memory of growing up in Robbins?
Oh boy, I really don't know. I really don't know if I have a favorite. Actually, I can't think of anything negative at all. All of our family was there. My grandparents lived 2 houses down from us, Nina lived in between my house and my grandparents' house. Her relatives lived on the other side of us. It's just kind of like a big, big family.
And so you'd say that was probably your favorite memory, it was like living with a big, big family?
I would imagine so.
Yeah, okay. Also, moving on a little bit after that, you dated for a while, I presume, and at what point did you realize that you and Nina wanted to get married?
Well, she told me it was time to get married, and I said, okay.
And about how long was that after you all had started dating?
Well, I got out of college. She always said I will never marry a bum, so you're going to have a job before we get married. And again, I was making more money riding bucking horses, but it wasn't a quote-unquote job. And so when I started down at the local grade school, well, then she figured it was time.
I see.
Yeah.
So once you got your job and you settled in from riding rodeo, then she thought you could get married.
Well, actually, I continued to rodeo after I started working also. I quit riding bucking horses when I turned 30, and I think I was 25 when we got married. So there was 5 years there that I was working and competing also.
I see. Okay. And how about some final thoughts here? What do you think is the most significant and transforming change in your rodeo days or things that have happened to you related to rodeo during your lifetime?
I think that the audience has gotten larger. I know that the purses have increased. I think the caliber of livestock is better. I think, and this may sound like a little prejudiced statement to me, but I'm not sure if the young boys are as tough as they used to be. You hear that.
How do you mean that?
Well, you hear coaches say things like that when they're talking about the athletes that are. Again, I may be sounding prejudiced when I say this, but there was a time when I was young to where you felt no pain. I don't care if your leg was hanging over on the other side of the fence. You were expected to be a certain way. You had to be a man. You had to step up. You had to do this. Well, now, if things aren't particularly right, well, these kids will get off. But I guess it turns more into an economic situation, too, because the prize money is so much higher, they can't afford to be hurt because then they can't compete tomorrow. So that kind of sets a tone for some of those things also.
I see. So they're concerned about their own physical well-being. In your view, prevents them from perhaps being a little bit more aggressive when they compete.
Well, yes and no, because I'm not sure if there may be better rodeo athletes today. I'm not sure if there are better cowboys today. But when I say rodeo athletes, specialists in their events, I think they're probably better today. Okay. But I'm not sure if I see as much second effort as what we used to see in the old days.
I see.
Now, the young kids would probably disagree with me, but I think anybody as my age or older would probably agree with me. So I think it's a thing that comes with time. And I'm sure this generation of kids will say in the next round, well, back in the day when I used to, and that's just something that just goes on and on, I guess.
Yeah. And how do you feel about changes in technology and communications and things like that? How do you feel that that's affected farm life and your business of rodeo promoting?
Well, I think it's the best thing since sliced bread. I mean, you know, technology, I mean, in any endeavor, in any situation, I mean, it's the wave of the future. It's the way things are happening. You know, there was 10 years ago, people had pagers, didn't have cell phones. You know, today, how do you make it without a cell phone? I mean, and that's a part of technology. I think as life evolves and technology gets better, increases, I think it provides a better form of life.
Now, for your business specifically, do you feel that that makes you have a better, closer relationship with your clients or your customers who contact you for rodeo promotion?
Oh, certainly, certainly. I mean, you can be reached at any time. You can give any type of information that you like, just, you know, at the click of a button.
So you feel like you've actually, it's a big boon to your business because you can keep much closer contact with your clients.
Exactly right.
I see. And what do you see for the future of farming and living in a small community like this? And then how does that relate back to what you were saying about the young boys aren't maybe as tough and
well,
for
when you
rodeo?
speak of farming, technically I'm not a farmer. We're in the rodeo business, and we have where the farming really touches me is the cost in fuel and cost in grain prices that I have to do this, you know, take care of to feed my livestock. And I'm hoping something gets better there, to be honest with you, because feed has really gotten high. Some changes that I expect to see is just as you know, I think we're in the greatest country in the world. I know we're in the greatest country in the world, and I think that anything that we've ever faced, we've always gotten by it. So I'm expecting things to probably turn around and get better. You know, I'm sure that as time has evolved, there were people sitting right here where I'm sitting now saying, oh boy, this is the worst it's ever been, you know, and as time went on, things got better and moved on.
So you would say that the future for your rodeo business is just an expansion, and hopefully there'll be some sort of leveling off of your expenses, your inputs.
I don't think it's going to level off because things are going to continue to get high, but I think everything will get better because if this raises, this has got to raise also.
Now, have you seen, because of the higher cost of fuel and other things, have you seen your costs increase and therefore your clients having to absorb those extra costs, or how have you managed those things?
It's got to be spread out, you know, somewhere. The boat's got to stay, you know, stay even, and you try to keep the cost down as much as you possibly can, and you know, you hope that the other side stays down as much as it can. But you know, like with fuel this year, it's been a little tough because my contracts were signed last year. And so you just have to eat that extra expense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you do share some things in common with more traditional farmers in terms of those expenses that you have, the fixed expenses.
Right.
Okay. And what advice would you give to someone thinking of pursuing a career in stock breeding or in rodeo promotion?
I think it's a passion. First off, I think you have to be passionate about it. I think you need to do a lot of research in how you want to breed livestock to make sure that you're breeding the right way. Trial and error is no longer necessary with all the books, with all the technology that we spoke of earlier, because you need to set things up so that you're breeding the way to get the result that you want. And in the old days, you're bred, and hopefully if one came out right, well then you try to keep breeding that way. But now you don't have to do that. You know, there's animals that are put in place that now you can buy semen. Now you know you have to own the bull. You know, you can buy semen. There's a lot of good things that have come along the line.
So as they say in ag, you can buy the genetics.
Exactly.
And you don't have to actually have the animal on site on your property.
That's correct.
What type of things along the way have you picked up and learned that's actually spurred your interest in genetics?
Well, this is something that my dad told me a long time ago, and it took me a while to kind of get it figured out, but it makes all the sense in the world. In breeding the horses that we breed, we found that the mare is everything. Now, people want you to think that, you know, the dad, you know, is the big deal, but my animals get their characteristics from their moms. So I'm a firm believer you can take a great mare and breed her to a goat and get an outstanding horse.
I see. Okay. And what part in bringing in different types of genetics, you know, as you've already mentioned, where you don't have to actually have the animal standing at stud, has that played in your breeding program?
No, actually I own my own stud.
Okay.
And the stud that I'm using right now, Mandan, he's probably about 15 years old. But I've got another stud right now that's a yearling, a long yearling, that I use to replace him when he gets too old. What happens is you have to make sure and change your stud out on occasion because you don't want to start inbreeding. And most of the mares that I have on site now are all Mandan's daughters. I've got 4 or 5 mares left that aren't his actual, you know, offspring. And when I get to the point where I need to start breeding his daughters, then I've got another stud that'll be ready in another year or two.
Okay. And so Mandan is your stallion that you're currently using right now?
That's correct.
And then all his daughters are your breeding stock mares?
Right.
Okay. And then can you clarify for me again, the one that you're going to replace him with, that stallion, is the offspring of whom?
Well, his dad belonged to a friend of mine that lives in Iowa, and his mother is one of my mares that, again, is not one of Mandan's daughters.
Okay, I see. Very interesting. Okay, and finally, what advice or wisdom would you like to give to future generations? Just
well,
in general about living in the farm life and with rodeo and the other things we've talked about just now.
Well, I'd have to go a little broader than that because I think life is life, period. I think that a person should be happy. So whatever it is that you want to pursue it with all you've got. When you get up in the morning, understand that you're going to give everything you have to be successful in whatever it is that you're planning on doing. And that's whether you live in a rural area, whether you live downtown Chicago, I don't think it really matters. But I think you need to try as hard as you possibly can to be the best that you can possibly be.
So that's what you would like to have people most know then?
That's what I tell all my kids.
Okay, very good. All right, well, I appreciate talking with you about your basic family and your background and things that we just might not have known about you had we not asked. So,
Well, the pleasure's mine.
Thank you.